What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily Podcast, powered by Anijar and Levine Accident Attorneys. We're getting close to game day. A lot to talk about. Some interesting comments from Cam Ward about his backfield. Also got a lot of news in terms of basketball. The Boozer twins on campus. We'll give you the latest there. Some movement with Miami potentially getting the number one class in basketball. That'd be a nice change. Also going to break down the Ball State game in terms of some guys that we think might have huge games and more. First, I want to talk about some folks that always perform. That is Anijar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anijar and Levine. All right, Pete, hop in from Tuscany. Look at that background.
We got a new location today, and looks, pretty similar to what I'm looking at outside of me. I wish I could actually do the show outside, but it's windy up here in the elevation. So I didn't really bring the full podcasting setup, have this little mic, and scared the wind is going to get in the way. But yeah, it doesn't look much different than the virtual background, I must say.
What are you doing out there? Just walking around, drinking wine?
There's not much walking around up here, man. We're all the way up a mountain. It's pretty what's the word I'm looking for? There's not much going on up here, right? So you got these little towns, and you got to drive up the mountain, and these properties are pretty spaced out. So did a little wine tasting earlier today, enjoying the finer things in life out here again in the Tuscan Valley. So excited to be on today. I have my new Fiorentina bucket hat right here that I picked up in Florence. So I'll be back in 2 days, man. I'm enjoying the last couple of days of this trip, but again, glad to be back on here, connected with what's happening back home.
Yeah, man, you look like Jamiroquai. I think you were like 6 when that song came out, so you probably don't get that reference. What are you know Jamiroquai? Is that on your list?
No clue, no idea.
All right, we'll look that up after the show. So, when you're in Tuscany, in that idyllic scenery, you want to talk MAC football, you want to talk Ball State. Obviously, the timing is interesting because you had a Ball State team that beat Northern Illinois, went down to the wire. Bowling Green almost beat Penn State. Northern Illinois did beat Notre Dame, fellow top 10 teams for the Miami Hurricanes. So a good time. We're going to dig into the particular position, namely Cam Ward, talking about his backfield. But Pete, real quick, I want to get your thoughts on Ball State and what Miami needs to do here against this kind of opponent.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because last week you face a FAMU who obviously Miami has, better athletes, and you expect them to go win the game. They did, but this is a FAMU team that should be the best of the HBCUs, right? So you're looking at your typical MAC team that's well coached, is not really going to beat themselves. We've seen the Central Michigans of the world give Miami trouble within the last 4 or 5 years now. So who else was it? Toledo was able to move the ball up and down the field. And I believe Logan Woodside was the quarterback for that team, if I'm not mistaken. That Deontay Johnson was on that team as well. So I mean, they had guys, right? So again, a team that you expect to come in here and not beat themselves. But, of course, you still expect Miami to handle business and win this game by multiple scores and keep the train rolling how it's looked the first couple of weeks here.
Now, Cam Ward had a comment in his post-practice interview that, Pete, I want to get you set up on, because it's interesting. I know he's defending his teammates or propping up his teammates, but I think it's worth the discussion. So, Pete, why don't you go ahead and fire up Cam Ward after practice?
For how young he is, Damian and Fletch is the two best running back duo in the country. Just because they can play similar if they need to, but they can play different if they need to. They're both good at pass protection. They both can catch the ball out of the backfield. They obviously can run it. I feel like what they don't get praised for is how they set up blocks, how they set up their cutbacks. So those two, they're the best running back duo in the country, and they make my job easier. I know when Coach calling the run play, sometimes we can RPO it, but the majority of the time I can just hand it off and let them do them.
So I mean, look, obviously, like you said, he's going to be sticking up for his guys. right? That's the type of leader that he is. But at the same time, we can go across the board here and kind of look at some of the other top tandems in the country. By the numbers, he's not far off. And that's considering Damien Martinez has had 2,000-yard seasons. Mark Fletcher did what he did as a freshman and has built on that early in the season coming off of injury. So obviously it's a great offensive lineman in front of them. But I think the fact that both of these guys bring that power element to the run game is something very unique.
Yeah, and look, I will make the case for what he said. I'm not saying I necessarily agree. I don't think it's crazy. I'm not going to put my neck out there yet. I need to see more, but I'll make the case right now. So obviously, if you talk about top duos in the country, look to the Big Ten. The two that jump out right away: Ohio State, Penn State. Ohio State, Quinshon Judkins, the Mississippi transfer, Travion Henderson, who's been at Ohio State forever, it feels like. Then Penn State, Nicholas Singleton, and Katron Allen. So in terms of NFL potential, I think those duos are hard to beat. Also, production-wise, you have a 1,000-yard rusher and a 900-yard rusher in both of those. Different when it comes to the Canes. You got a 1,000-yard rusher in Martinez. Fletcher was closer to 560. Of course, he had injuries and he played in the rotation. But one thing I will say, NFL, yes. I think these four individually will get drafted higher than the duo. Maybe not all of them, but overall, they're going to be more NFL prospects, I think, than Martinez and Fletcher. But if you're comparing what Martinez and Fletcher do well, I think the physicality and size is on a different level. Now, these are not small backs for Penn State and Ohio State. Judkins is 219, Henderson 208, Singleton 227, Katron Allen 229. Most of those guys are physical, especially the Penn State guys. But in terms of physicality and toughness and running people over being sort of the top of the scouting report, I would say Fletcher and Martinez are the most physical of those backs and the biggest of those backs. And of course, combine that, and you have some guys that are very, very tough to tackle. And again, these guys, Pete, when you'll talk about, I'm sure, they're better pros overall on paper. But if there's one difference between the pro game and the college game, to me, it's the importance of big backs. You look at Georgia and Alabama, the two best teams of the past decade. Big, powerful backs. Sometimes they're like Nick Chubb or Derrick Henry and they're NFL stars, but not always. Alabama's won with backs that were big and powerful that weren't necessarily NFL stars. Georgia just did with Kenny McIntosh. So I think the importance of physicality and size in college allows you to overwhelm college defenders, even playoff caliber college defenders, and take over games in the fourth quarter. So I think that aspect plus the pass protection, which I think because of the size and willingness and IQ of Martinez and Fletcher, you can't beat them as pass protectors with other backs just because they're bigger and very smart and tough.
So any other backfields you would mention? I would say, look, Georgia is always going to be in that mix. You saw what they did week one without ETN, the guy who was going off for them. Some expected to be their third back. So, I mean, they're pretty loaded as well.
Yeah, Georgia's always good. But again, Georgia's all about power traditionally. Power over anything else. Obviously, you got to be fast and athletic, which Fletcher and Martinez are for their size. But size and physicality always came first with these Alabama and Georgia backs. That's because of the stuff that doesn't always show up on the stat sheet. The ability to just dominate and demoralize your opponents late in games, which Alabama and Georgia have done for years. We've all seen. I think with Martinez and Fletcher at their size, they bring that element. Also, you heard Ward say they play similar but different. And what I think he means by that is, they're both big, they're both physical, they both can beat you that way. Martinez, extremely patient, more of your Le'Veon Bell type back, who's very patient, waits for it, and then hits it with power. Whereas Fletcher just comes out with his hair on fire, hits it hard, full speed, fast, and is going downhill looking to run someone over. So both physical, but kind of different types of backs.
But I think that's where there's always that misconception of change of pace. It's a power back and a speed back, but they can still be a change of pace because the defense gets used to the tempo that a certain back and patience and cadence that a certain back runs with. And I think that's what made someone like Frank Gore so hard to defend, as a defense, right? That was one of the things that made him so difficult to defend. And I think that's what you see here, is that they do have a bit different running styles. So the defense can't get too comfortable defending one or the other.
Yeah, and that's the way their reps are split. I think what Miami has done, and it hasn't mattered because the games have been blowouts, but Martinez in the first quarter, Fletcher takes over in the second and third quarter, and then Martinez ices the game with his patient runs in the fourth. I think you'll see a game. I don't know. Hopefully it's not Ball State, because hopefully Ball State's another blowout, but we've seen what the MAC does. But hopefully the next tight game that you see, you'll see Martinez in the fourth quarter start to those patient physical runs that are going for 5 yards in the first quarter, and the fourth quarter maybe go for 15, 20, 30 yards. I think that's what the vision is, which is why you're having those two with different running styles, but both very physical, staggered the way they are, first and fourth, second and third. And I want to go back to the pass protection, because people don't I feel a lot of times, especially on the message boards like, CanesInSight.com, 7 million posts and counting, people get enamored with the running ability, and then they get mad when a coach won't play a guy because of pass protection. But when you have a $2 million quarterback, expensive quarterback, you got to protect him. And he's the best player on the team. He's one of the best players in the country. You have to protect him. And it's different protecting him with a 195-pound back than with a 235-pound back. And those big backs are not always good pass protectors. They're not always smart. They're not always flexible and good at getting in their stance and getting low and delivering a strike. These two are very good blockers, very willing and smart blockers, on top of being big. So if you're 50-50 run pass, 50% of the time, these guys are like having a tight end back there. And that makes a big difference, especially when they can also run the ball, set the tone, and make big plays on occasion.
Agreed, 100%. And it's again, one of the things that makes them so unique, because you can't really catch them off guard in terms of personnel from a protection standpoint.
Now let's switch gears we'll come back to the Ball State game here. We've been talking about the player of the game, usually Cam Ford or Tyler Barron in the past. We're doing something different, trying to predict the player of the game ahead of time. And for that, we got our friends at Beacon Adjusters. Was your home or business damaged due to the recent hurricane? Did your insurance deny your claim or not pay you enough to make repairs? If yes to either of these questions, you need to contact Beacon Adjusters Group. Beacon Adjusters Group experts can help you get your insurance claim settled and make sure you get fully paid. They don't get paid until you get paid. 954-466-4224, or just email info@Beacon Adjusters. We lead in your time of need. So the beacon of the game, the player of the game, we're going to get ahead of it. We'll come back to it with Beacon Adjusters on Monday. But right now, I just want to predict. To me, I like Mish Powell, safety for Miami. You saw his big interception against Florida, had a quiet game against FAMU, wasn't really needed too much. Ball State's offense last year was terrible. It was one of the worst offenses in the country. That was their Achilles heel. Their passing game was one of the worst passing games in the country. Mario's propped up their offensive line in pregame, because that's what you do. You build up your opponent. Nick Saban, Bill Belichick. You've seen it for all the top coaches. But this was one of the worst offenses in terms of protecting the passer, which leads into their bad passing game, and then interceptions thrown. So if you look at interceptions thrown percentage, they're 91st last year. 3.21% of their passes get picked. Now, Miami was even worse than that with Tyler Van Dyke. Of course, that problem hopefully has been corrected. But this is a team that throws the ball into harm's way a lot. They fail to protect a lot, and they're not very good on offense in terms of passing the ball. So if you get a lead on them and force them to pass, I could see balls getting intercepted, especially when you got Tyler Barron, Elijah Alston, Messidor, guys like that bringing pressure. So Mish Powell, with his IQ, with his ball skills, he had 3 picks last year for Washington, took one to the house, was their leading interception guy, has one this year, almost took it to the house. I think he's going to be probably a 5 interception guy this year, now that he knows all the answers to the test and he's such a veteran player with a good pass rush in front of him. Excited to see what Mish Powell does throughout the year. I think he adds to his interception total here against Ball State. That's my predicted Beacon Adjusters player of the game.
I'll go with a guy on the offensive side of the ball in Jacoby George, who obviously had that impressive touchdown against Florida week 1. But look, I think Xavier Estrepo is going to be a consistent guy every game, 5 to 8 catches a game, pretty consistently, and he will have these games where he has a couple touchdowns. He'll have games where he doesn't score at all, but is a part of what Miami does offensively. And I think there's always going to be someone else that steps up, right? And at least ideally in Shannon Dawson's eyes. I think Jacoby George is someone who could, by the end of the season, be Miami's, second or third leading receiver. Potentially it should be the second leading receiver for this team, but I think is a big play guy for them. Cam Ward, I think, has been open talking about in camp how Jacoby is one of the keys to the offense. And I think he has a big game. And I think he has a big, a bomb downfield. I think he gets close to that 100-yard mark and a couple scores.
Yeah, it's funny with the receivers, having the opportunity to watch practice spring and fall or August camp. Restrepo was there every day, was in great shape, was healthy. Isaiah Horton, every day, great shape, was healthy. George and Brown dealt with injuries, particularly George, as he was here longer. Sam Brown got here later. But they had things that were really no fault of their own that set them back in terms of practice time with Ward, time to work on their body in this facility. So I think that is the reason why you're not seeing them right out the gate play as well as you think they can with their talent. The guys that were more consistent in practice, again, when I think consistent is being there, healthy, ready to rock, in tremendous condition. Those guys came in ready to go. Restrepo, Horton, they've been the two go-to guys. Elijah Arroyo as well. So I think with the season, the balls are going to be in the air. You're going to have a lot of opportunities for George. You have a lot of opportunities for Brown. I could see both of those guys breaking out today. I agree. I like your pick of George on offense, especially with that deep ball, which we haven't seen Ward just go back and chuck it down the field on a go ball or a fade. That's what George does better than anybody on the team probably right now. So that'll be very interesting to see if either of those guys to get it done. But we'll revisit this for the Beacon Adjusters Player of the Game on Monday. Hopefully we got a lot of names to choose from.
So we're going to switch gears now, to basketball here in terms of basketball news. So it's funny because we've seen in the past recently the football coaches use basketball games when the basketball team has now been relevant over the last 10 years or 10 years plus since Coach Larrañaga has been here. You get a big crowd. It's a nice thing on campus to bring to the guys to the game. It looks like Coach Larrañaga is asking for the favor to be returned a little bit as the Boozer twins went to go watch Canes football practice. And of course, there's some Columbus ties there. Mario Cristobal, Columbus guy, so I'm sure he's well aware of them and did whatever they needed of him. But that's pretty cool to see because you don't always hear about that crossover taking place.
Yeah, look, before anybody gets excited, they're not going to be playing football. They're just they were visiting University of Miami, and that was part of the experience. But what to me is very interesting is obviously we know what the Boozer twins are ranked, and we know that Miami's right in the mix. Duke, Florida, they visited them unofficially. Pete, I know you've been talking about the allure of home for the Boozer twins. Duke being the alma mater of their father and obviously a elite program. Florida kind of being in the middle of those two things. But if Miami is successful in getting the Boozer twins and nothing is set in stone, we all know that Miami has a very good chance. We've been talking about it in the podcast for a while. There's deep competition. They're working it. They have a chance, at least in the short term, to be the number one class in the country in basketball. Now, that is what will happen if they land the Boozer twins. And part of the reason why is Matthew Abel. So our guy Luke Chaney, our guy Gabby Rudia, Luke Chaney helped break the Boozer news. Great guy at 247. He's been on our pod before. But then Gabby Arudia from 247, football guy, he noted that on the 247 rankings, there was a tremendous jump for Matthew Abel, the 6'5" shooting guard out of Sagemont Prep, who jumped numerous spots, is now the number 39 player in the country, 25 spots up to number 39. So that's a guy Miami's already got as a commitment. So they have a commitment from Abel. He's going to be a Cane, and he's rising up the ranks. Not as high as Bethea, but similar in terms of being that late bloomer that rises up the ranks and gets a lot of attention. You're seeing him, some of the things he was able to do in July when he really blew up. I think that was the month where people saw him in these showcase games and realized that he was really developing into his body, working on his skill. Right-hand player, finishes with his left. This is an emerging guy, Pete, and I know you follow basketball recruiting closely. I always watch more from an NBA perspective, but seeing a guy like this, he looks the part of somebody who honestly is a little different than what Miami's had at the shooting guard position historically.
Well, but it's interesting because every time we talk about these guys that they're bringing in, you look at Isaiah Johnson Aragu, for example, in last class, and some of these transfers, like they all fit an athletic profile of someone who could play at the next level. I think that's credit to Coach L's staff, of course, Bill Courtney, Cody Kimball, DJ Irving. They've done a really good job now. And look, we're saying this off the heels of a rough season, right? I think there was a lot that really went wrong there. But I think that they're constantly learning and evolving, and the way that they're building out this roster now, it should be pretty. And this, these are guys who may not be here for another year or so, but the way that they acted in the portal, and again, the body types of some of these guys, right? I think it's going to be a roster that's built to last. I think the last couple of years, even the years that they made these deep runs, they probably weren't as deep, at the end of the bench as they would have liked to. That is college basketball right now. It's tough to be 9, 10 really, really good players deep because of the portal, and there's a lot of good players and a lot of good programs. But you look at the guys that they continue to bring in, and this is a guy who's still a year away, and you look at his body type and you look at his strength, and I mean, as some of the scouting reports have noted, a little bit of a quirky shot, but it goes in a lot, and that sort of stuff kind of gets refined. Hopefully at the next level.
Yeah, and I like his size. He's going to be strong. He's not a skinny 6'5". When I say that Miami hasn't gotten these guys, really out of high school is more what I mean, because you had Sheldon Mack, Sheldon McClellan, you had McGusty. So you've gotten some of these guys, but usually as transfers. I mean, Pete, correct me if I'm wrong. I really just don't remember signing these like 6'5" shooting guards that could shoot and score like this.
No, I mean, Earl Timberlake was a pretty big recruit. It didn't work out for him. Matthew Cross was another one who was a good. I mean, these were pretty, high 4-star recruits, I want to say. So, but again, different profiles. Earl Timberlake was more of a point forward, so to speak, a point guard in a little bit of a bigger body. Matthew Cross, it really didn't work out from the beginning for him. And I think what you're getting in some of these wing guys that they're bringing in is that versatility. I mean, look, we haven't even mentioned Keyshawn George because he was a one and done, but what a find by the staff last year in him, really near the end there, right, in the process for him. So, no, it's impressive. And again, I think some of these guys aren't one and done type players, right? But you get them in there for a couple years and they have big time ability to potentially develop and play at the next level.
Yeah, of course. Look, Jalil Bethea looks like the best pro prospect Miami's ever had. We'll see when he starts playing. We're excited to see what he can do. We've heard some great things out of practice. Austin Schwartz, another guard that can score. I'm impressed that they were able to get a guy with this size and the scoring. The true pro style too, as opposed to, we've had very good shooting guards that are more combo guards that can score and distribute. I remember that 6'3", 6'4" range, but Thea seems to fit that. Schwartz, of course, Wong. So interesting profile and a guy that's blowing up late, which is what you want.
And he's a year away. And he's a year away, man. That's the craziest part to me is that he looks like a guy who should really be playing, in college coming up this year. So
now talking about some current stars here as we move to the Miami Hurricane team store post of the day. We've been doing this, trying to tell you guys about the post of the day on CanesInSight.com. Free message board, the biggest Canes community on the planet, bar none. Nothing is close. 7 million posts and counting. It is brought to you by the Miami Hurricane team store. And the Miami Hurricane team store has an event coming up that you guys want to know about. This is on Sunday at 3 to 4. Look at these names. They're going to be signing autographs at the Hurricane team store. You're talking about Ruben Bain, Mawanoa brothers, Ines Cooper. These are 4 of the best players on the team. These are 4 of the best players in the ACC. These might be 4 of the best players in the nation. You got all 4 of them right there in front of the school at the Hurricane team store next to the Thesis Hotel. You do not want to miss this, man. This is awesome. They had an event last week with Damian Martinez, Mish Powell. A lot of our listeners were taking pictures, posting it on CanesInSight.com. posting it on Twitter with their kids, meeting them. It was just an awesome, awesome event. I heard the feedback from it was great. Everybody had a really good time meeting the players. The players were awesome. Of course, Canes Connection, they're pros. Miami Hurricane team store. It's new, but it's not, because this is Harry Rothwell. He's probably the oldest guy in the Canes community when it comes to merch. You guys know him if you've seen him at all Canes. We're now moving on up, official with the school, across the street at the Miami Hurricane team store. Everything brand new, exclusive gear. And of course, this amazing event Sunday at 3 p.m. Set your clocks. There's no Dolphins game, so nothing to miss. Head out to the Miami Hurricane team store. So with that, the post of the day. And, with this one, Memnon always seems to have the post of the day. And one thing happens on CanesInSight, which I love, is because we've been around for almost 13 years as a board. I think we're starting in 2011. So, yeah, we're getting close to 13 years. We get a lot of old posts that get bumped, revisited as a player moves on in his career. And you get some blasts from the past. Sometimes the guy makes the pros that you hadn't heard about since 2016 when he was a recruit. Pete, you've seen some of those threads. Kadeem Telfort, his thread got pumped from 2016 or 2015. Now he's made the professionals. But here, what we're talking about is Jake Garcia. Of course, this is the first post here, November 22. This is 2022. This is when he's still with the Canes. He had shown flashes, a great spring game, had shown some flashes in some of the FCS games. Now is at ECU. So Pete, go ahead and go to page 8. And this thread has been bumped because Jake Garcia is winning games, but struggling to protect the football. Pete, when you go to page 8 here, you see.
Yeah, it's loading up here. The Tuscan internet is, it's tough when you're up this high, when the elevation is what it is.
They don't keep track of East Carolina football in Tuscany.
Well, trying to get this internet to load, but yes, as soon as here it is.
So here we go. So now it's been bumped up. Jake's got about 7 interceptions in 2 games. They're winning. There's a lot of people questioning in East Carolina whether you should play. So you have sort of the egg on face for some people who were trying to get him to stay. Of course, the people that thought he was going to be a bust are gloating. Now maybe he turns it around. I personally hope he does. He was always a great, respectable Cane, treated people well liked. I want him to ball for East Carolina. But we'll see how it happens. He's definitely struggling protecting the football at a lower level of competition with lower talent around him. He's going to have to turn that around. And I think a cautionary tale with Jake Garcia, Pete, which is, we talked about the real studs in college football for the most part are not these overcoached, overtrained quarterbacks. They're guys that played multiple sports all the way through high school. Cam Ward being example number 1. He was a shortstop, then really focused on basketball, was an outstanding point guard for his high school, was an under-recruited football player because he didn't travel through the camps like Garcia did. But when it came time to college, he developed quickly. He had a natural feel and athleticism and sense of space that came from playing the multiple sports. I think a guy like Garcia, who's so finely trained and such a big name from an early age, it hits different than it does with a Cam Ward once they get to the big leagues.
Yeah, I think he was a quarterback his whole life, right? That was what he grew up doing, and there's definitely positives to that in terms of your knowledge of the game, but a lot of the stuff that these other guys pick up are from the other sports, the arm angles, the movement stuff, just the feel in the pocket, right? When those live bullets come. But again, like you said, I think we're rooting the best for Jake. Obviously, a lot of these guys who transfer out, you hear stuff about them, after the fact they leave, they start saying stuff in the media. You've heard none of that with Jake. He was a guy that at a certain point that the team really rallied around, right? It didn't work out for him, but there was there was a sense of hope behind him at one point here, right? So hoping for the best, but I agree with you 100% that those multi-sport guys, look, there's only so much you can learn about the position up until you get to that college level, right? Because a lot of the stuff in high school, you got to read the defense, but it's not to the level as you'll have to do here. You really want to see them develop that arm talent, develop that feel for the game as much as possible, and a lot of that is by playing other sports and being competitive in other aspects.
Yeah, and also we got to watch the early bloomers. I think the early bloomers, that's a scary thing when you got a superstar at a young age. I mean, I see it, and now, my son's playing baseball pretty seriously. So I've seen his teams in his career, and you see a kid that's like the shortest kid on the team, and he's an unreal shortstop. He catches everything. He's super coordinated. Then 4 years later, he's the same size. And then the other kids are starting to coordinate. And then the tall kid that might have been a little goofy 4 years before, when he starts to coordinate to his body, he's throwing ropes and crushing the ball. So I think you got to be careful with early bloomers. Sometimes those guys stay good, but a lot of times their peak just comes a little earlier and doesn't necessarily translate to college. But I hope that's not the case with Garcia. I hope he balls out East Carolina. They are 2-0, I believe. So he's in the winner's circle, which is the most important thing. And hopefully he can cut down those turnovers as he gets more reps. But yeah, that's it, Pete. We got the game coming up, Ball State. I'll be wearing that Tom Petty shirt that won't back down, 41-7, 41-9. What was the score of that game? 41-10.
41-17. 41-17.
It's getting the
blowout.
41-16?
No, 17.
17. Yeah. The blowout. The shirt's got the right score. Blowout's bigger in my mind. But head out to our shop.
Listen, appreciate everyone's support on that. We had really good feedback from that. Ton of orders there. So listen, if there's a certain shirt you want, if there's something that you guys want to see, let us know. And we're trying to follow the trends here. So we'll get you guys what we can get you. And hopefully we have a lot more shirts to make this year with more big wins and big season ahead here. So go Canes. Remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and check out CanesInsight.com as well.
Yes, sir. Go Canes.
Yeah, this an insight to the Canes, and we ain't playing no games. Joaquin said dominate, so that's what we do. Home of the legends and 7th floor crew, down in Miami where hurricanes brew. You here for the rumors, we bring you the news, cause it's all about the you. And nobody do it like CanesInSight. 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 It's CanesInSight.